The case of Alyssa and Stephen Plattel is one of the most unsettling family tragedies of the 21st century. At its core lies a story of adoption, familial reunification, forbidden love, and devastating violence. The events that unfolded have left an indelible mark on those involved, highlighting the darker corners of human psychology and raising critical questions about family, law, and mental health. This harrowing tale begins with a young couple, their child, and a series of choices that would later snowball into an unimaginable tragedy. Alyssa met Stephen Plattel as a teenager in the late 1990s. Their relationship moved quickly, and despite their young age, they married while Alyssa was still in her teens. From the start, their union was fraught with challenges: financial insecurity, emotional immaturity, and Stephen's controlling tendencies created a toxic environment. Alyssa would later describe Stephen as volatile and manipulative, a man who often used his temper to dominate those around him.
Fully emotionally and mentally abusive throughout our 20 years together. Did do many violent things. He had nearly beaten to death one cat and did beat to death another cat.
At the age of 17, Alyssa gave birth to her first child, a daughter named Katie, in 1998. Financially unprepared and emotionally overwhelmed, Alyssa and Stephen made the difficult decision to place Katie up for adoption. The infant was adopted by a loving family in Dutchess County, New York, where she grew up in a nurturing and stable environment, unaware of the circumstances of her birth. For Alyssa and Stephen, life moved forward, albeit with lingering guilt and unresolved emotions about their decision. They went on to have 2 more daughters, attempting to create a semblance of normalcy despite their troubled relationship. The arrival of their new baby, a little girl they named Denise, brought no relief to the tense situation. While Alyssa adored her newborn and showered her with affection, Stephen showed little interest. He rarely held Denise, avoided feeding or changing her, and, most concerning of all, was driven into uncontrollable fits of rage whenever she cried.
She would cry, and it would just instantly trigger him. He would curse, he would tell me to shut her the hell up. He would at times scoop her up and place her into a big cooler that we had. And then sometimes he would just shut it tight. He knew it was possible she could be dead, and he was not fazed by it. So I would finally go back there and open it and get her out.
By 2016, Katie was 18 years old, a bright and artistic young woman with a passion for drawing and creativity. Raised by her adoptive parents, Katie had enjoyed a stable childhood but always harbored curiosity about her biological family. Upon reaching adulthood, she decided to search for her birth parents, a decision that would set in motion a tragic chain of events. Katie connected with Stephen and Alyssa through social media, and the Plattels eagerly welcomed her back into their lives. Overwhelmed with excitement and guilt, they saw this reunion as an opportunity to make amends for their past decisions. Katie moved from New York to live with the Plattels in their home in Henrico, North Carolina, where she was introduced to her younger half-sisters. Initially, the reunion seemed positive. The family bonded over shared experiences, and Katie began to feel a sense of belonging she had never known. However, beneath the surface, troubling dynamics were brewing. Stephen, now in his early 40s, began to show an inappropriate level of attention toward Katie, who was still emotionally vulnerable and navigating her place in the family. Stephen's behavior quickly escalated. Alyssa noticed him becoming unusually close to Katie, spending excessive time with her, sharing intimate conversations, and even sleeping in her room. Alyssa confronted Stephen, but he dismissed her concerns, accusing her of overreacting. These tensions deepened the fractures in their already fragile marriage. In early 2017, Alyssa decided she could no longer tolerate Stephen's behavior. She left the family home, taking her 2 younger daughters with her, and filed for divorce. Meanwhile, Stephen and Katie's relationship became romantic and eventually sexual. What began as an inappropriate fixation had crossed into a deeply disturbing territory. Stephen manipulated Katie into believing their relationship was something special, portraying it as a rare and forbidden love that transcended societal norms. Isolated from her adoptive family and reeling from the upheaval in her life, Katie became emotionally dependent on Stephen. By mid-2017, their relationship had escalated to the point where they began openly referring to themselves as a couple. In July 2017, Stephen and Katie traveled to Maryland, where they married in a legally binding ceremony. They concealed their biological connection from authorities, allowing the marriage to proceed without interference. The couple celebrated their union publicly, posting photos on social media and presenting themselves as soulmates. During this time, Katie became pregnant with Stephen's child. The pregnancy further solidified their bond, but also drew the attention of her adoptive parents, who were horrified by the situation. They reported the relationship to authorities, triggering an investigation. In January 2018, Stephen and Katie Plattel were arrested in Virginia after authorities discovered the deeply disturbing nature of their relationship. Both were charged with incest, adultery, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The allegations sent shockwaves through the community and made national headlines, as the public struggled to comprehend the magnitude of their actions.
These pictures show a happy new mother and father. This link, the couple's baby registry. But this is anything but your typical love story. 20-year-old Katie Plattel is 42-year-old Stephen Plattel's biological daughter.
This is a pretty unique set of facts, I'd say.
North Carolina investigators arrested the couple. Both face charges related to incest and will be extradited back to Henrico, where they first allegedly developed a sexual relationship.
The nature of their crimes, an illicit, romantic, and sexual relationship between a father and his biological daughter, was both shocking and deeply unsettling to many. Despite the severity of the charges, both Stephen and Katie were granted bail, though under strict conditions. One of the most important stipulations of their release was that they were to have no contact with one another. The courts hoped that this separation would help disrupt the unhealthy dynamic that had developed between them and provide some relief to the victims involved. For Stephen and Katie, the consequences of their actions were only beginning to set in, as both were left to grapple with the legal ramifications of their relationship. Following her release, Katie returned to New York, where she went to live with her adoptive parents, who had been devastated by the revelation of the illicit relationship. The Fuscos, who had lovingly raised Katie since she was a baby, were shocked and heartbroken, struggling to reconcile the girl they had known with the woman who had now found herself at the center of a public scandal. They tried to provide support to Katie during this difficult time, but it was clear that she was struggling with deep emotional turmoil. The sudden upheaval in her life was overwhelming. She had just reconnected with her biological family, only to have her entire world upended in a matter of months. Katie's adoptive parents, despite their pain, sought to be as supportive as they could, offering her a stable environment to try to heal and cope with the public attention. But Katie was no longer the young woman they had known. The gravity of her actions, combined with her deeply confused emotional state, made it increasingly difficult for her to process the situation. She was torn between the loyalty to her adoptive parents, who had raised her, and her biological parents, who had re-entered her life in such a tumultuous and destructive manner. Stephen, on the other hand, remained in North Carolina, cut off from both his wife, Alyssa, and his daughter, Katie. His world had begun to unravel, and the consequences of his obsession were only just beginning to sink in. His behavior became increasingly erratic, and it was clear that he could no longer cope with the legal proceedings and the alienation from his family. Obsessed with Katie and unable to let go of the relationship, Stephen began to spiral into a deeper psychological crisis. The arrest and legal charges had left Stephen isolated, consumed by his obsession and desperation. He frequently reached out to friends and family members, but his communication became increasingly frantic and disconnected. On April 12, 2018, Tony Fusco and his adopted daughter, Katie Plattel, left their Dover home for Waterbury. They were followed by a man in a Honda minivan, who pulled up alongside their truck at an intersection. He fired an AR-15 style rifle into the truck, killing Tony, 56, and Katie, 20. The shooter, Stephen Plattel, Katie's biological father, former husband, and the father of her baby, was later found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in the van. Meanwhile, Stephen's mother called 911, revealing Stephen had killed his baby, Bennett, in North Carolina.
He killed his baby, and he's in the house.
Okay, you said that he told you he killed his baby? Okay, ma'am, listen to me. What's your name?
Police discovered the baby had been suffocated with a pillow. Afterward, Stephen drove overnight to ambush Katie and Tony. Katie, her baby, and Tony were buried on April 21st. The case sheds light on the tragic consequences of incest. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this compelling, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more shocking stories. Stay safe.